I'm Jeyson, 26 years old, originally from Europe. My wife, Casey, and I moved to America a few years back, settling in a busy city where the lights never dim and the nightlife is always buzzing. We were that couple active, fit, always at the gym or out running, living what most would call a perfect life. I even had a blog about healthy living, sharing workout routines and tips. Casey was always there, always by my side, or so I thought. Our weekends were spent at clubs, soaking up the energy of the city. We were young, in our mid-20s, living with full momentum. But recently, something had changed. There was a distance growing between us, subtle at first but undeniable. Then came that day. I had just gotten home from a late meeting. Walking into the bedroom, something felt off. The bed was made too perfectly made, and there were odd traces of liquid on the sheets. It didn't take a fitness guru to notice. When I asked Casey, she laughed and brushed it off. "Oh, it's just snot." She smirked like it was a funny misunderstanding. But there was nothing funny about the gnawing suspicion that started to coil inside me. I didn't confront her then. I didn't push. But I watched. For the next few days, every glance at her twisted my gut further. Then, one day while preparing content for my blog on her MacBook, I saw a message that turned my world upside down. It was from a guy named Evan. The words hit me like a punch to the stomach. "Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing." My blood froze as the betrayal sank in. That was it, the confirmation of everything I feared. There was no denying it now. And as I sat there, seething, a plan began to form in my mind. I sat in front of that laptop for what felt like hours, my mind racing through the possibilities. I had proof of her betrayal. The message from Evan was there, clear as day. But what was I going to do? Should I confront her and demand answers? Rage boiled inside me, but something else took over, a calm determination. I wasn't going to scream, cry, or beg. That would give her too much satisfaction. No, I wanted my revenge to be quiet, subtle, and devastating. I started planning my escape. Being a freelancer gave me flexibility, and I was grateful for that. Over the next few days, I began to move small things out of the apartment without Casey noticing. Clothes, personal items, important documents, anything I didn't want to leave behind when I finally made my move. I even canceled a few gym memberships and subscriptions under my name, making sure not to leave any loose ends. Meanwhile, I acted completely normal around Casey. I smiled, laughed, and pretended that everything was okay. Even as I saw her texting Evan, her face lighting up with excitement I hadn't seen in months. She had no idea I knew. But the real genius of my plan? I wasn't just going to leave. No, that would be too simple. I wanted to make sure she felt the weight of her actions, that the consequences would stick with her long after I was gone. So, I started working on something that would leave her utterly blindsided. I began setting up a fake collaboration for her. Since she had access to my healthy living blog, I made sure it looked real, arranging for a high-profile influencer to reach out to her through my blog email, offering a partnership. Casey loved the idea. She always wanted to be in the spotlight, even if it was through my work. She got so excited about the deal that she started talking about how this collaboration could take my blog to the next level, not realizing it was all a setup. The more she bought into the fake deal, the more my plan fell into place. I could almost taste the sweet revenge coming, and I knew it was going to be worth every calculated move. The fake collaboration plan was working better than I could have imagined. Casey was hooked, diving headfirst into planning for what she believed would be her big break. She even started bragging to her friends about how she was finally going to make a name for herself beyond just being Jeyson's wife. It was pathetic, really seeing her so caught up in this illusion I had crafted. I continued to play along, pretending to support her every step of the way. I would smile and nod as she showed me mock-ups of social media posts she planned for the launch, all while I was counting down the days until my final move. In the background, I kept preparing my exit. I had found a small apartment in another city, far enough away that she wouldn't be able to track me down easily, but close enough that I could keep tabs on her through mutual friends if I wanted. I started shifting money out of our joint accounts, little by little, so that she wouldn't notice the dwindling balance until it was too late. By the time I was ready to leave, she would be left with nothing but a handful of empty promises and shattered dreams. Then, Just as everything was set to go, I hit her with the first blow. One night, as we sat together watching a movie, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, smiling the same secret smile she always did when it was a message from Evan. I pretended not to notice, waiting for her to go to the bathroom, leaving her phone on the couch. This was my chance. I quickly unlocked her phone, took a screenshot of all her incriminating messages with Evan, and sent them to my own phone. But that wasn't the end of it. The next morning, while Casey was out, I made sure to print the messages, pages and pages of them. When she returned, I handed her the stack without a word. The color drained from her face as she flipped through the evidence. Her mouth opened and closed, trying to form an excuse, but no words came out. "I know everything," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the storm brewing inside me. "I've known for a while." She stammered, trying to explain, trying to shift the blame. But I wasn't listening anymore. I had already moved beyond this moment. As she scrambled to make sense of what was happening, I delivered the final line that would set the rest of my plan into motion. "I'm leaving. But before I go, I've left you a little surprise." Her face twisted in confusion, but before she could ask what I meant, I walked out the door. Behind me, I could hear her calling my name, but I didn't turn back. My revenge was only just beginning. I left the apartment without looking back. Casey might have been calling my name, but I was already a ghost in her life. I had set everything in motion, and now it was time to watch it all crumble. That evening, I sent Casey the screenshot of her text messages with Evan, just to twist the knife a little deeper. Along with it, I left a short, simple message: "Goodbye." I didn't wait for her reply. I blocked her number before she had a chance to respond. It felt liberating, like I was shedding a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. But that wasn't the real surprise. The fake collaboration she had been so excited about? It was about to come crashing down. 2 days later, when she tried to finalize the deal with the so-called influencer, she found nothing. The emails disappeared, the contact vanished, and the dream she had been chasing evaporated in front of her. She was left scrambling, confused, and desperate. Her excitement quickly turned into panic as she realized that the opportunity she had been bragging about didn't exist. I could imagine her searching through her emails, trying to recover what she thought was her ticket to fame, only to come up empty-handed. And then, the final hit. I hadn't just blocked Casey's number, I also blocked her access to my blog. All the content, all the followers, everything she had tried to attach herself to over the years was now mine and mine alone. I posted a statement on the blog, explaining that I was taking a new direction and that, from now on, I'd be focusing solely on my personal journey, without any distractions. Casey's name was wiped clean from everything, as though she had never been part of it. As expected, mutual friends started reaching out, confused by the sudden change. They asked where Casey was and why I had removed her from the blog. I kept my responses vague at first, not wanting to start any drama yet. But the truth has a way of leaking out, especially when it's as juicy as this. Word started to spread. People began piecing things together, wondering what had happened between us. It didn't take long for Casey to start losing followers on her own social media. People stopped responding to her posts, unfollowed her in waves, and eventually, she became a shadow of her former self online. Meanwhile, I had made my clean break. In my new apartment, far away from the chaos, I felt a strange sense of peace. The life I had left behind was unraveling, and I didn't have to lift a finger to watch it happen. It was as if karma had finally come knocking on Casey's door. But the best part? Evan, the guy she thought would replace me, wasn't sticking around. I had heard through mutual connections that their affair had fizzled out almost as quickly as it had begun. He had lost interest, and without the thrill of sneaking around, Casey was left with nothing but the fallout of her own decisions. The real revenge wasn't just in the quiet escape, was in watching her world collapse around her, piece by piece. With no way to stop it, it didn't take long for Casey's world to start crumbling exactly as I had planned. The social fallout was brutal. Friends who had once been charmed by her slowly drifted away as word spread about her affair with Evan. The fitness community that we had built together turned cold toward her. All the carefully crafted friendships, the social circle she had been so proud of, began to crack, leaving her isolated. And Evan? He ghosted her completely. From what I heard, once their fling was exposed, he wanted nothing to do with her. He wasn't interested in being caught up in her mess. The thrill was gone, and so was he. She had thrown away everything for a guy who couldn't care less. But that wasn't the worst of it. Remember the joint bank account I had been quietly emptying? Casey finally noticed, and by the time she did, it was too late. She had nothing left. No money, no blog, no followers. She tried reaching out to me through mutual friends, desperately wanting to explain, to apologize, but I wasn't interested. I made sure to cut off every connection, leaving her in the mess she had created. She wasn't just alone, she was trapped, drowning in the consequences of her own actions. One day, I got a call from an old friend who still worked at the gym where Casey and I had once been regulars. "Dude, you won't believe what just happened," he said, half laughing, half in shock. Apparently, Casey had shown up for a workout, only to be met with cold stares and whispers. She tried to carry on like everything was normal, but it was obvious she wasn't welcome anymore. The gym was like a second home to us, but now it was just another place where she didn't belong. Word had spread fast, everyone knew about the affair. People started avoiding her, treating her like an outcast. It was ironic, really. The woman who had been so obsessed with appearances was now the one everyone was talking about, but for all the wrong reasons. She tried to pick up the pieces, messaging people for support, but no one wanted to be associated with her anymore. The more she reached out, the more doors closed in her face. Even her family had heard about the affair and wasn't exactly thrilled with the idea of welcoming her home. It was as if the life she had built for herself, the one she'd sacrificed everything for, was disappearing before her eyes. As for me, I was thriving. My blog, now fully mine, had taken off in ways I hadn't expected. The new focus on my personal fitness journey resonated with people, and I started getting offers for sponsorships and partnerships. My follower count shot up, and with it came opportunities one had only dreamed of before. It was as if shedding the weight of Casey had set me free, both personally and professionally. While Casey floundered, I was climbing higher. I had rebuilt myself, stronger and more focused than ever. And the best part? I didn't have to do a thing to destroy her. She had done it all on her own. The satisfaction of knowing that her downfall was entirely her doing was more fulfilling than any dramatic confrontation could have been. It was quiet, calculated, and utterly complete. And I wasn't done yet. As the days went by, Casey's life became a shadow of what it once was. Every avenue she tried to recover seemed blocked. I had completely severed ties, leaving no way for her to reach me, and I wasn't the only one distancing myself. Mutual friends slowly cut her off, unfollowed her on social media, and stopped returning her calls. Even her gym, the place she once used to flaunt her lifestyle, felt like a cold, unwelcoming space. But I had one more card to play. You see, while I had been quietly dismantling her life, I'd also been keeping an eye on her social media. Casey still had a few die-hard followers, people who didn't know the full story, who still saw her as a fitness inspiration. I couldn't let that stand. She had caused too much damage, and she needed to face the truth in a way that would be undeniable. One afternoon, I decided it was time for the final blow. I gathered all the screenshots of her conversations with Evan, the ones that detailed her betrayal in full, brutal clarity, and put them together in a neat little package. Then, I posted them on a fake Instagram account. I didn't say much, just enough to set the context. I let the messages speak for themselves. Within minutes, the post started gaining traction. People who had followed her for years were tagging her in the comments, demanding answers. Others shared the post, spreading it through fitness communities and beyond. It didn't take long for the story to go viral. Her carefully curated image as the perfect fitness queen crumbled in front of her eyes. Casey's response was immediate and frantic. She tried to deny everything at first, saying it was fake, that someone was out to ruin her. But the evidence was irrefutable. The messages were right there, staring back at her, word for word. There was no way out. No excuses left to make. Her last few supporters quickly vanished, disgusted by the reality of who she was. The comments turned vicious, with people calling her a fraud, a cheater, and much worse. She tried to block and delete them, but it was impossible to keep up. The damage was done. The final hit came when one of the fitness brands she had been hoping to partner with publicly announced that they were cutting ties with her, stating that they didn't support dishonesty and infidelity. It was a nail in the coffin of her online career. With her reputation in tatters, no one wanted to be associated with her. Casey had lost everything: her followers, her friends, her potential partnerships, and even Evan. And all it took was a quiet, calculated move on my part. As for me, I was already miles ahead, both in life and career. The peace I felt was indescribable. Watching her world collapse, knowing it was the result of her own actions, was the perfect conclusion to the revenge I had meticulously planned. And through it all, I hadn't said a word. I had let her self-destruct. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. With Casey's world in ruins, I felt a strange sense of closure. It wasn't about celebrating her downfall, but rather about freeing myself from the weight of it all. She was no longer a part of my life, and I had moved on, stronger than ever. Watching her unravel wasn't as satisfying as I thought it might be, at least. Not in the way you'd expect. What truly felt like victory was the sense of peace that came with knowing I was free from her lies. Life for me was better than I could have imagined. My blog had evolved into a platform much bigger than I'd anticipated, attracting opportunities one never thought possible. Sponsorship deals rolled in, collaborations with major fitness brands became regular, and my focus on personal wellness and mental health connected with a broader audience. I was building something real, something that wasn't tied to anyone else but myself. Then came the unexpected twist. One day, I received an email from Casey. I hesitated before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it without a second thought, but curiosity got the better of me. The message was long, filled with apologies, regret, and endless explanations. She wrote about how sorry she was, how she had messed everything up, and how much she missed me. She begged for another chance, saying she had changed and realized what she'd lost. But here's the thing, I didn't care anymore. There was no satisfaction in her apology because, at that point, it didn't matter. I was so far beyond her betrayal that her words didn't even sting. I had healed. I had moved on. And the person I had become after everything was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than ever before. I didn't reply to her email. In fact, I didn't even give it a second thought. I simply hit delete. She was a closed chapter in my life, and there was no point in reopening the book. The real victory wasn't in watching her suffer, it was in realizing that I had built a life that no longer revolved around her or her choices. I had taken back control, not through anger or confrontation, but by living well and moving forward. As time passed, I heard less and less about Casey. Eventually, she faded into the background, just another distant memory of a life I once lived. My story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about rebuilding. It was about growth, learning from the past, and becoming someone better on the other side of it all. And that was the sweetest victory of all. Discover more stories. Subscribe today.